All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining today, the webinar. Very happy to have you take some time out of your very busy schedule to join us. I see we got a lot of Datex customers on, which is great. We got some partners and just some people in the industry. We're going to try to make this as informative and useful as possible. We're going to be talking about in this webinar really just what's going on in warehousing, 3PL, warehousing automation, and those type of things. I'll be doing this with my colleague, McCord Frampton. And again, try to make it as useful as possible. Just some housekeeping items. We're going to record this, so anybody who really wants to watch it again, I'm not sure why, but if you wanted to, you'll get it in your inbox. Everybody's muted, but if you do have questions, there's a little question and answer feature you can use. We'll save some time at the end to answer any questions you guys have. So feel free to enter them as we go. Okay, so by way of introduction, I'm Glenn Van Laningham. I head up basically the implementation services group at Datex, so I'm responsible for all of the projects and services work at Datex. I've done that for several years here, but I've also been in this industry forever. I've been involved with WMS and warehouse technology pretty much my whole career, done it a long time. And I'm joined by McCord. He's our main solution consultant. McCord, you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure thing. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. McCord Frampton, a solutions consultant here at Datex. So I work with a lot of our prospects that are looking at using our solutions at Datex for the first time and understanding their challenges, their requirements. So it gives me good perspective on what kind of hurdles people are facing out there in the industry, across industries and verticals and things like that. So looking forward to the conversation today, Glenn.
Awesome. Okay, so what are we going to talk about? We're going to try to keep this as real as possible. We're trying to avoid the marketing and the market buzzwords and stuff like that, and really just talk about what we're hearing. I know for most of you, things like WMS and things like warehouse automation, it's probably part of your world. It's not the main part of your world. You've got your main thing that you do in your job and with your company, but we're the opposite. So McCord and I, we spend all our time talking to customers about WMS, talking to partners, going to trade shows, mostly talking to 3PLs about automation technology. So we're just going to share with you what we're hearing in the industry and really give you some real live examples, and talk about some of the neat things that are happening, right? We will touch on AI, but again, we're going to make it real. We're going to talk about where we really see AI right now, with logistics and warehouse automation. And as we go through each case study, we're going to try to tell you how other companies are leveraging this stuff to get value ultimately, because that's what it's about. We don't have a ton of stuff. We're not going to overwhelm you. It's just a handful of things that we're going to go through. So if I just get right to it, let me tell you what we're hearing. And this is from talking to Datex customers, talking to Datex partners. We just got back from Modex, I don't know, 6 weeks ago, something like that, big trade show where we talked to a bunch of people in the industry. And these are the main things. You probably can relate to this, and that's part of the point here is we want you to know that the things that you're dealing with are probably similar to everybody else. And the first, for sure, is margin pressure. Everybody that works in supply chain, I think you probably have two jobs, right? You have your main job, running a facility, running a business unit, running your transportation or whatever. And your second job is cutting costs all the time. And that just continues, whether it's labor, whether it's, materials, facility, technology, everybody's just constantly figuring out the next place they can cut cost. Now, it's not all doom and gloom, right? I mean, there's a lot of really innovative stuff happening, especially in 3PL. 3PLs are growing because they're getting into new industries, new channels, new stuff they're doing, really neat stuff. But that comes with challenges, right? I mean, every time you have come up with a new service offering for your customers, you got to figure out how to deal with it operationally, how your systems are going to deal with it. And that's just a very common thing. Okay, so what about AI? Well, when I think about AI, I took a course in how to be a good consultant many years ago. And what I remember about it is the instructor said, like, the most important question in consulting is not even proper English. It's the phrase like how. That's what you should always ask is, well, like how? And when I think about AI, that's kind of what I think about is there's so much AI in our world right now, and it's creeping into our business world. It's definitely creeping into technology, but there's a lot of asking like how is this really going to help me? How's this really going to, drive ROI and drive value right now? Because it's very modest so far, and we'll share some examples with you. And then finally, this is a bit preaching to the choir to this audience because a lot of you are in 3PL and Datex customers, but I've been in WMS my whole career, and one thing is as true today as ever is that in 3PL, regular WMS doesn't cut it. A WMS platform just means way more to 3PLs. And if you're working with just a traditional WMS in 3PL, it's probably a bottleneck for you. You need a broader set of capabilities, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. So let's jump into each one of these one by one. And I mean, I got some stats for you here that kind of tell the picture on what's going on with the margin squeeze. Now, look, if any of you work for third-party logistics providers that have a transportation arm, and you're a part of that, I really feel for you because in the upper right-hand corner, I mean, we all know that fuel prices are just skyrocketing, diesel, all that, huge pressures on anybody dealing with, asset-based transportation. But if you even put that aside for a minute, in warehousing, the pressure on labor cost continues to be a big deal. Warehouse costs have gone up another 20% almost just in the last 4 years or so. 20% 4 years, I don't know, may not seem like a big deal, but if you remember that any distribution operation, whether it's 3PL or not 3PL, at least half of your costs is labor, right? You got other costs, you got facility, you got inventory carrying costs, you got, utilities and all that stuff, but at least half of your cost is labor, and there is pressure on labor costs. Wages are going up, and along with that, if you took economics in college, right, it's the classic supply and demand thing. The supply side of labor is gone down as well. We actually have less people working in warehouse distribution today than we had at the peak. So you got supply going down, you got demand and cost going up, and what is that? It's just creating a squeeze. The squeeze on anybody running distribution. If you're running a 3PL, there's just constant, how can I deal with less labor cost? So we want to talk about what are some ways that we're seeing that people are dealing with that. And if we had to pick one thing, this doesn't even have to do with WMS. It does have to do with Datex because a lot of our customers are implementing this technology. We're doing a lot of projects with what we're going to talk about here. But if there is one major technology just sweeping distribution more than anything else, it's these AMRs, autonomous mobile robots. McCord's going to talk more about it, but the one thing I will say to tee it up is rarely do you see something get transformed the way automated warehouse technology has in the last couple of years. Like if you went back 5 years ago, 10 years ago, automating warehouses is all about, well, we're going to put in conveyors, we're going to put in sortation systems, we're going to put in pick to light. There's a whole variety of automation we used to put in warehouses, and it is amazing how that stuff has just trailed off significantly because there is a better mousetrap now for warehouse automation. It is these bots, these smart robots that work with humans in many more use cases. Every day, there's more use cases for these automations of these bots to work in the warehouse. That's just changing the game. And I'm going to turn it over to McCord. McCord, you can go into a little bit more detail about why these are so unique and different. Better mousetrap.
Yeah, and to your point, right? This isn't exactly WMS, but WMS has been addressing labor costs and trying to boost the productivity of labor for a long time independently, right? We've done things like interleaving and intelligent task grouping and automated task assignment, trying to get the most out of a labor force, and that's been great. We've seen good success with that. Recently, we've just been hearing more and more requests from both customers and prospects to kind of integrate with these auxiliary technologies like an AMR to take that even a step further. Glenn mentioned we just got back from Modex a couple months ago, and if anyone's been to one of these shows, whether it's Modex or ProMat or any of the big trade shows in the last few years, you just can't miss how many companies are there promoting their various solutions. And there's a ton of them, a ton of different solutions and use cases that these tackle. We just kind of threw a few up on the screen here, but kind of whether you're moving units or cases or pallets, or I need to do a cart pick kind of thing. There's different offerings for each one of those. Glenn, if you go to the next slide here, we can drill into that a little bit more. So yeah, different solutions for different use cases. Also, multifaceted in the sense that, yes, they can of course do picking, but they can help you on the inbound side as well. They can do things like put away. They can do things like replenishment. One of the big kind of value propositions of these is it's typically an as a service model. So a lot of these companies do not require you to buy the robot up front. It's going to be a subscription model, and that allows you not only to avoid a big capital expenditure, right at the beginning, but also gives you the flexibility of scaling your robots up and down. For example, if you have a peak season in November and December where like, oh shoot, I need to add more capacity to my facility. Great, we can just scale up a few additional robots to help us deal with that additional volume. The deployment on these is typically pretty fast. So these are inherently smart bots. Like they have kind of vision, and they know how to safely navigate around each other. They know how to safely navigate around humans. So it's a faster setup time on the robotic side, but the integrations that we do with these are pretty quick as well now. So we've done a handful of these, to Glenn's point, with customers that we're very familiar with how to plug these into footprint, and so the time to integrate is pretty low. And maybe the biggest benefit of kind of this new model is there's minimal infrastructure investment for an operator. So the automation has been around for a while in warehousing, but a lot of these existing or original solutions required you to like tear out all your racking and build up your entire new facility with proprietary racking or a brand new system. And that's a problem that this AMR model has solved. They work with your existing infrastructure. They kind of just map to your existing pick locations and are able to navigate and use what you already have in place at your facility. So this is a great example, and definitely something we're hearing a lot of requests to integrate with various AMRs to address that labor margin squeeze that Glenn was getting to in the first couple slides here.
Yeah, so as you can tell, we are just kind of blown away with how quickly this is just transforming our industry, and part of it is what McCord talked about. It used to be, because I'm sure there's a lot of you thinking, well, I'm just not big enough, right, to invest in something like this. This is for bigger warehouses or bigger companies or whatever. But that's part of what makes this so powerful, is because it's so scalable, and because it's as a service sometimes. This is coming down market very, very quickly. Smaller warehouses can start with just 10 of these robots, and they're in essence renting them as a service instead of investing massive amounts of capital in a big automation project. So this is coming really fast, and it's really interesting to see, and the projects we're doing with our customers are just fascinating. All right, so let's keep going. So what's the other thing that we hear all the time talking to our customers, especially in 3PL? Well, there's a ton of innovation. Like, we tend to think of innovation being a technology thing, but the innovation just in 3PL, and what I mean by that is 3PL's finding new ways to drive revenue, new services for their customers, new industries to get into. It just continues unabated. And some obvious examples are, it's amazing how many 3PLs now have gotten into e-commerce. And e-commerce it's not just one thing. It's not just, well, okay, well, now I'm going to do, piece picking direct to consumer. E-commerce is the whole realm of, well, I can connect with your e-commerce platforms. I can process the returns, right? I can deal with the seasonality of e-commerce. um, and this is huge because there's a whole slew of companies out there that are pretty good at doing their normal fulfillment, but they don't want to do their own e-commerce. Um, Now, the theme here is, as your company, as your 3PL takes on e-commerce, you got to figure out how you're going to deal with it. You got to have a WMS now that can do all these things, right? That can handle returns, that can handle everything that goes with, unit handling, replenishment, kitting, all those things, cartonization, things like that as well. The other obvious example is life sciences. We have a lot of customers at Datex that are third-party logistics providers in life sciences, and the number of new specialized services around life sciences is incredible. There's all kinds of new, very specialized, storage capabilities, cold chain, companies that support, just special things like, trials, certain types of regulated stuff. It just seems like a wide open area for life sciences 3PLs to get into. Now, again, it's the same thing. You're going to face new challenges, new compliance you got to deal with. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the whole FDA validation process. If you work in life sciences, you have to go through something called validation. If you know, you know. It's very intense. If you don't know, you're probably lucky. But validation means you have to document to a very detailed level every system that you use. In fact, this has become so common that Datex, we now have a partner that specializes in helping companies get validated, that work with us directly when we have a customer that needs to get validation. But there's serialization, there's all kinds of stuff that goes into doing new types of life sciences. Um, but we're going there because our customers are taking us there. There's lots of business in these new services. And then there's all kinds of other value added services. I mean, we go to customers all the time and they tell us about new types of, assembly they're doing, or customization that they're doing, or packaging that they're doing, putting together meal kits. That just seems to be the theme now. Nobody just does distribution anymore, right? Everybody does, pick, packing, and shipping plus all these other activities, right? And they charge for all this stuff, right? And they can have all kinds of creative ways to charge their customers for this. And believe me, we love this stuff because this keeps us very busy at Datex, because every time one of our customers gets into something new like this, it usually means, more work for us and more help that we're going to make with them with Datex and Footprint to help them enable this stuff. We're going to take one of those that, again, we saw a lot of this at Modex that we thought is really, really interesting that's coming. And I'm going to let McCord talk about that. And that's automated packaging machines.
Yeah, getting into e-commerce, there comes with a slew of new challenges. It's a higher volume of orders. It's smaller quantities in your orders. It's a higher volume of packages, obviously, and again, WMS has addressed this before with technology and solutions like cartonization. So I'm going to pick the best box for you based off of the materials, dimensions, and quantities that you're shipping. And that was a huge help, right? That got us, took us a step in the right direction. It helped take that decision out of an operator's hand and make that much quicker and a more optimal package that we were putting these into. Recently, again, this has been taken a step further, and I think my biggest takeaway from Modex this year was I just noticed way more of these companies displaying their solutions, these automated packaging machines. So these are machines that there's different levels of complexity. Some are kind of like, I'm just gonna erect boxes over and over again with pre-cut corrugate. But the really kind of neat ones will actually build exact size boxes to the dimensions of the products that you're inducting into it. So you'll kind of put some units onto a conveyor. It goes in. It takes an image, a 3D image. It figures out the exact size of box that it needs to create, and it'll actually immediately cut it, build the box, put the material inside, seal it up, label it, and send it out the door. So it takes the entire manual pack station experience and automates that whole process. Again, we're seeing this with several of our customers that are in the ecom business that they realize, like, holy cow, this pack station thing is no joke. We've got tens or thousands or tens of thousands of packages going out on a weekly basis, and sometimes their pack station can become the bottleneck of my operations. They're looking for ways of, again, reducing that labor cost, but also increasing their productivity with integrating a system like these automated packaging machines. And Glenn, go to the next slide. I can explain these a little bit more. So what do you get with these, right? You go to the next, there we go. So these boxes are going to be right sized and built on demand. So it's literally a custom built box per order. That obviously leads to, I'm using less corrugate, I'm using less void fill. I'm going to get lower shipping costs because my boxes are smaller. I'm taking on less charges from the freight companies. These are typically very fast. They advertise I'm doing hundreds of boxes per hour. I'm replacing manual pack stations. It can typically pace with, if I have like an AMR solution or an ASRS, that it'll pace pretty well with the volume that those are putting out on the fulfillment side. Obviously, you're getting labor savings and safety with these. These companies will advertise anywhere from 1 to 3 FTEs saved per line, but it's also a safety improvement. It's something you don't think about, but a lot of times these pack stations, it's repetitive motions. If the material is heavy in particular, it can lead to kind of injury strain or strain injuries, and it'll free up your staff for more higher value work. But a kind of tertiary benefit is the sustainability and your branding. So obviously you're using less box volume, you can fit more package in a truck, but the actual unboxing experience, customers find to be better. Like it's a cleaner, I open it up. It's, I can't tell you how many LinkedIn posts I've seen where someone gets a shipment and it's like this super small item in this massive box. And I'm obviously in the logistics world, so I get a lot of those posts, but people complain, right? They're like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe I got this massive box for this tiny little thing. So it leads to kind of a better consumer experience on the receiving end and the unboxing. So for all these reasons, we're seeing this take off big time in the e-commerce world. And again, something that comes up not only with our existing customers, but our prospects that we're talking to are asking for footprint, RWMS, to integrate with technologies like this to alleviate some of that labor costs and increase their productivity on the outbound side.
Okay, moving right along. Let's talk about AI. So we're going to give you guys a very real-time update on where we think AI really is when it comes to logistics, distribution, and 3PL. And here's how we kind of describe it. Obviously, AI is everywhere. I mean, it's all over our lives, right? I mean, it's just every little thing we do now is infused with AI. And if you went to Modex, or if you go to any trade show, or you look at any technology companies' marketing material, it's all over that as well. But where is AI really being used in logistics? I would tell you that the biggest traction AI has had in logistics so far has been in all the optimization algorithms. So if you think about the optimization that goes on in logistics, things like transportation, right? I have a bunch of orders and I need to deliver them on certain routes, and I have a transportation optimization routine that runs to figure out how to build loads most effectively. AI has been infused in that to improve that. There are some similar things in warehousing. Those AMRs that we were talking about earlier, they have a ton of AI so that they know where to go and what the most important task to do is next and all that as well. Things like slotting optimization now are using AI in all their optimization. Same thing with analytics. There's a lot of AI in analytics. And then the last area where there's been a lot of traction is in demand forecasting. Demand forecasting of inventory has always been about these complex models, right, that look at history and try to predict how much inventory you're going to need for various places in your network. Now, the reality is while that's been good, that's had some traction, that a lot of the juice was already squeezed in those areas, right? I mean, we've had transportation optimization for a long time. Right? It's been very good, right? Same thing with slotting, same thing with forecasting, right? Those things, I mean, we've had decades of improving those algorithms so that while AI is making them better, it's not like there's tons left to squeeze out of those. So when you really dig into, okay, where's like the massive ROI that AI has made in distribution, right? In logistics, it's a little hard to find. It's a little hard to find. And like you can look at what all the analysts are saying and things like that and surveys they do with companies, and you kind of get that same feeling, right? There's a lot of promise. People are experimenting with it, people are doing trials, and we are at Datex as well, but it's hard to find a lot of attraction so far. Now, where have we found the most traction so far at Datex? Analytics, for sure. All using all the data and footprint and using AI on top of that analytics. And I'll let McCord talk about that in a little more detail.
Yeah, one of the interesting stats from your last slide was 65% of companies are stuck in this kind of ad hoc experimentation phase where, to your point, Glenn, it's almost paralysis by analysis. There's so many things you can do with artificial intelligence. Where do I even begin? Like, where do I even want to start unpacking this whole thing? And we kind of had the same not problem, but we took that into consideration and thought, like, where is the first place and the kind of the easiest place we can implement this right now? And what we kind of came out with was an analytics platform. So everyone is looking for kind of these rich dashboards I can double click into with my KPIs, my metrics, the important metrics for me, whether it's for my leadership team or for my floor team in terms of keeping up with status and things like that. Everyone has always wanted these and has built them for a long time, but this has traditionally taken, whether it's a BI analyst or maybe like some soft development, to build the queries and build out the actual dashboards for how they actually display the data from these queries. And we saw an easy use case for artificial intelligence there, where we can not only have an embedded analytics tool, BI analytics tool in Footprint, but enable that with an AI powered bot that can help me write my queries, that can help me build out the charts and graphs and the visuals that I want to actually display. And that's been a huge success. This is actually live in Footprint now. There's probably a couple of you guys on the call that are using this, but it is truly kind of democratized the ability to build out these dashboards and KPIs and metrics and things like that. As long as you can describe what you want to see, just using kind of natural English language, you can use our AI bot that'll help you build out the query, and it'll build out the visuals and put them onto a nice dashboard for you. So that's been a huge win and an immediate deployment that's already live for us in the AI world. Now, there are more advanced things that we certainly see coming for Footprint and our overall platform. And Glenn, if you hit the next slide, I'm going to touch on a few of those. So Brian Batchelder, many of you may know, is kind of our lead of AI strategy at Datex. And we see a future here where we're going to have agents interacting not only with your Footprint WMS, so an agent in your WMS that's going to be planning waves or doing reslots or making LP moves, performing actions in your WMS based off of the data and the intelligence that he has, but also within Studio itself. So for those of you who don't know, Datex Studio is our low-code application platform that our WMS is built on top of. So that's where I can go and build screens and workflows and any sort of logic that I need to tailor to my particular operation. And that's been in place for us for a long time, or for a few years at least, and working really well. But the kind of rise of artificial intelligence is going to supercharge the ability for people to interact with that. So before it was low code, and now it's, let me just use an agent. I'm going to interact with an agent and operate or interact with Studio to build out my custom platforms. So this whole topic deserves probably a webinar on its own. I mean, we'll probably end up doing one of those very shortly here, but the cool kind of concept that or the way that we're approaching this is we're going to expose this to any agent. So we're not going to kind of pin you into, hey, you have to use our Datex AI agent. The thought is, whether you're using Claude or OpenAI or Goose, any of these agents, AI platforms out there that offer these, bring your own, and we're going to build skills for that agent to interact with, both in the WMS and in Studio, to kind of supercharge what you're able to do in both of those applications. So lots more to come here. And like Lynn said, there's people are debating on even how to incorporate this stuff into their applications and processes. So we're taking a two-pronged approach. We've got it in there already with our footprint analytics, but there's definitely a future where agents are going to be interacting directly with both the WMS and our Studio to streamline those things as well.
Okay. We're going to cover one more topic, and we want to specifically talk about WMS. I know we've talked about other technologies so far, but we want to spend just a little bit of time talking specifically about WMS. And again, this is going to come across differently for different people in the audience. If you're a long Datex customer, you've already heard this, you've already lived some of this, but this continues to be evolving and continues to be really, really important. If you're new, if you've never heard from Datex before, or maybe you're just researching WMS for 3PL, this is a core foundation you need to understand. So one of the neat things about working in WMS is that it's extremely mature, right? It's been around for a long time. There's a ton of great WMS technology out there. It's very proven. The ROI is tremendous. There's a gazillion case studies. Now, the reality is, and this is kind of the dirty secret, is there's a lot of solutions that do the same thing. They do the core stuff, right? In fact, we joke around a lot of times because we see a lot of companies that are evaluating WMSs and they really struggle, right? Because they have these, intensive evaluation processes, and they sit through demos and they do, all kinds of evaluation, and they really have a hard time distinguishing from one solution to the next, right? They all work, they can all work for most companies. That is just different for 3PL. There is just some stuff a WMS platforms need for a 3PL that is just not relevant to other companies. And if you don't have these things, you're definitely going to struggle. You're definitely going to be missing out. So, for example, just the billing engine, right? It's amazing, all the things we talked about earlier, all the new services, all the innovation, and all the new channels that people want to get into. It seems like one of the main things that always has to be figured out is how are we going to bill for this, right? How are we going to charge a customer for this stuff? So having a very strong billing engine, 3PL billing engine at WMS is just mandatory if you're a 3PL. And we continue to invest and make our billing engine stronger because we have to. We're trying to keep up. You could say the same thing about the customer portal, right? I mean, there's a lot of companies that want to give their customers a portal to see stuff, but to 3PLs, it's critical, right? It's how they communicate with their customers. It's how they get orders. It's how they send reports and all that stuff. You could say the same thing with integration, right? I mean, regular shippers, they do EDI, they integrate with their host system and things like that. But to 3PLs, that is a ever ongoing weekly, monthly activity, right? They get a new customer. The first thing they have to do is figure out how to integrate with them, how, get their orders in via EDI. So having a platform that can quickly integrate with new customers is just mandatory. And then, I could say the same thing about all the manufacturing, the kitting, the value-added services. So like one way of thinking of it is a lot of WMSs will run your building and do a very good job of running your distribution center. For 3PLs, you kind of need a system that runs your business a little bit more. Right now, granted, we don't do everything. We don't do HR and stuff like that as well, but there's a lot more that goes on to run a 3PL business in a platform than just running the facility. maybe the biggest example of that is the ability to make your WMS extensible. And we said we weren't going to use buzzwords. Extensible is just a fancy word for easily customizing it for whatever you're doing next, for that next customer, that next facility, that next report, whatever. Extensibility just tends to be very, very important. It's very important for anybody with a WMS platform, but for 3PL, it's just critical. And the whole Datex studio that we've built is our extensibility platform that enables us to do that. And instead of showing it to you, we're gonna give you some examples of where we've used our extensibility capabilities to help specific customers, and McCord's going to do that.
Yeah, the other thing that you mentioned here about 3PLs that's we kind of joke about internally and with customers a lot is the only consistency is change. You never know. I mean, any given week, any given month, you can get a new customer. Somebody's going to come back and say, no, we need to start doing this. If you're serving 20, 30, 40, 50 customers at a time, that just multiplies. So having a WMS that is flexible, that can adapt, that can meet new requirements and take on all the challenges that your customers are going to throw at you is even more important for 3PLs for that reason. This is an example from earlier this year, a prospect. It was a prospect at the time who had been in 3PL, kind of traditional cold storage 3PL. So they were storing and shipping things like meats and cheeses and dairy. And want some new business. They started getting into distributing for one of the biggest egg brands in the country. And I think they realized, there was going to be some nuance to this. Like shipping eggs is a little bit different than dealing with steaks and things like that. But did not realize that their system was going to be so rigid that it couldn't keep up with the changes that were required. So specifically with this customer, what was kind of neat about them is they have a high density racking. So with the volume of eggs that they had to receive in and out, they actually had a 73 deep pallet deep high density racking. So think about that. You've got one side 73 pallets, and the other side I can only access it from one side or the other. And they had to operate in a FIFO methodology still, but with the volume of eggs they were getting, their allocation strategy basically just broke. They could not use their old system's allocation strategy, and they resorted to using basically a custom reporting tool that told them, hey, here's where my oldest pallet is. It's in location A, but it's 10 pallets deep. Okay, I need to go and dig out all 10 of those pallets, and that's what I'm going to ship. So they were allocating based off of a report, which is the exact kind of thing that we don't want to see happening, right? That's what a WMS should be doing for you is, determining the most optimal pallet to pull, and then configuring that allocation strategy to say, okay, if there's anything in front of it, I want to violate FIFO because I'm prioritizing efficiency in this case. So I want to pull my oldest pallet, but pull anything that's in front of that in the position as well. So that's something we're able to do in Footprint with a concept of what we call advanced workflow interfaces, or AWIs. And that's a prospect that is now a customer because we're able to build an allocation strategy for them that actually works, right? It's going to work to meet their new industry and their new customer and how they ship. Another example, and we touched on this a couple times already, is in the e-commerce world. So we've had several customers. Glenn, you can go to the next one. Yeah, several customers that are foraging into this e-commerce direct-to-consumer world from a more traditional or a more B2B retail fulfillment kind of operation. And again, there's a whole slew of challenges that come with that. One just being the sheer volume of orders that I have to deal with. So all of a sudden, like, I have to think about wave planning and how am I going to group orders together? And, do I automatically wave? Do I have to do this manually still? That's just tough to kind of wrap your arms around when all of a sudden you've got thousands or tens of thousands of orders coming into your system that you've got to get out on a daily basis. We have a really cool advanced wave planning feature in our Footprint product that will automatically group orders, based off of carrier or service level or customer. It's intelligent enough to kind of look into the order to see, okay, are these singles orders? Are these multis orders? Are all these orders for the same product? And then even allow you the flexibility to change the way that you pick those. So, for example, I might have a normal cart picking routine where I go to a primary pick location and I pick from that into a cart, into a bin on a cart. But if I see I've got a spike in volume for, say, 100 or 500 units or orders for the same material, well, maybe I want to bypass that and go do a batch pick, right? Maybe I want to go grab a full pallet and bring it to my pack station and start packing out of that pallet instead of going through my normal replenishment to primary pick flow. So that's the kind of flexibility that you're getting with Footprint WMS, is the ability to on a wave by wave basis, pick how I'm picking and how I'm grouping those orders together. Last example I'll give to you is we had another customer that wanted a tailor-made cart picking process. They were really frustrated with their WMS and how rigid the cart picking process was. And so they literally sent us a document with, here's exactly what I want to do. Here's the prompts that I want to do. Here's the screens. I want a picture here. And we literally came into Datex Studio here and were able to configure exactly what they were looking for, using their requirements and using their requests. And that's kind of the bottom line here, right? Is how are we able to do all this stuff is because of the technology that we're built on. And that's Datex Studio, which is a low-code application platform, and the flexibility of Footprint WMS. So, I mean, at the end of the day, what we want you to take away here is the foundation of 3PLs are, we believe, the WMS, and it's paramount for 3PLs to have a flexible WMS that's able to continue to serve you as these changes come, as your customer base changes, your requirements change. It's just so important to have something that's going to grow with you and flex with you when those things come up.
Okay. Thank you, McCord. All right. Well, those are the topics we wanted to go through today. We got a couple minutes left and we can answer any questions. It looks like we got one question so far. So let me go through that, and then if anybody else has any questions, we can talk about that. So question, how big does my facility need to be to cost justify AMR or customized packaging? Okay, well, very good question. And I'm not sure I'll be able to give you an exact answer. I'm sure all the AMR vendors probably have an exact answer for that, but the first thing I would say is, while we showed you AMR robots that were being used for piece picking, case picking, even pallet picking and things like that, I think most of the ROI right now is in unit picking operations. So I think I'll start with that. Unless you're doing some unit picking, like e-commerce or some kind of unit picking, right now I wouldn't even consider it. If you're doing case and unit picking, then it's, you could use it for both. And I would think you probably have to have at least 20 or 25 workers in a facility, doing picking and replenishment and put away and things like that, before you would be able to meet the threshold of investing in robots, 10 or so robots to work with them. That's kind of my guess, is something like that. So, and there are warehouses that are, 100, 150,000 square feet that have 20 or 25 workers in it, and 10 robots, again, is probably, feasible. So it scales down pretty good, but I would only focus on it if you're doing picking. The customized packaging, I don't know. That's probably for much more high volume. You probably want to be a pretty high volume pick and pack operation before you invest in those. Those are probably pretty expensive at this point. So.
Good question. I would agree with that, Glenn. And I know some of these AMR vendors too will even have, a minimum, robots that they'll deploy. So that's something to consider, as well as if those thresholds are going to be in place. Okay.
Well, again, thank you guys all for joining today. Appreciate you giving us some of your time. You'll get a follow-up from us. If you have any questions, you can get in touch with us. But otherwise, have a good rest of the day and have a good rest of the week.
Thanks, everyone.